I can't rationalize decisions and things. I just know with every molecule of my being that something is right. And I think that that's another thing about taking care of yourself is allowing the space for that intuition to kind of flourish and grow.
Welcome back, everyone, to Reconditioned with me, Lauren Backney. I am really excited for you to hear today's episode with Jo Fairley. Jo is really an incredible human being who I first spoke to about 2 years ago, and I would consider her now somewhat a mentor. She has really inspired me in business, but not just in running a business, but also in running a business intentionally while trying to help the planet and being mindful of that, while also being mindful of our own health, and not in this kind of egoic way, but in a way that is for the greater good. And that term, the greater good, has really been taken out of context and used to scare people a lot in the last few years, and I mean it in a very different sense. And Jo and I really today just had a bit of a chat really about her journey being the founder of Green and Black's chocolate and how that came about and what she's learned from that and how she kind of manages her life in an intentional way with some really interesting bits of information in there. I really hope you'll all enjoy this. I know you will. And don't forget to rate the podcast on Spotify. You can do that just by clicking the stars. So that would be great if you can do that. And so let's get on with this episode with Jo. Before we do, a quick word from our partners, Block Blue Light. I'm so excited to be working with Block Blue Light again. You guys know I talk about their blue light blocking glasses a lot, but I actually have new reason to talk to you about them now. So a lot of you know we're renovating our new house at the moment, and we have decided to go ahead and kit out our entire house with anti-blue light bulbs because of how damaging modern lighting is to our health and our sleep. We wanted to change everything modern houses usually have that we never question, but that are actually really detrimental to health. So in this case, things like not having dimmers because they release such high EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, or not having LED or fluorescent lighting anywhere, which seems crazy to everyone because that's just what we're used to. We wanted lights without damaging blue light, but in rooms like the kitchen, I really wanted to make sure I still had enough light, especially living in the UK where it gets dark at 4 p.m. in the winter. And this was a little bit of a concern of mine because I still really want the house to be fully functional for modern living. But the Block Blue Light team created the world's first biologically friendly day to night full spectrum light bulb. And that's a lighting technology that really closely replicates the same visual color spectrum as visible natural light from the sun. And this sort of exposure to full spectrum light will increase energy throughout the day, and it uplifts our mood and increases overall well-being. And of course, these lights are super low EMF. And low EMF is something I've become hyper aware of in recent years and something we're really trying to focus on with this house. So for rooms where we don't need lights that are as bright, we've opted for their amber light and taken their advice on things like having floor and table lamps. So after dusk, we'd only have lights at eye height because our ancestors would have only had firelight after dusk, right? And no overhead lighting. And we know that when we mimic our natural states as much as possible, our health thrives. And we wanted to make sure we did this with our new home in every way we could. So they also created the first ever blue light free reading lamp that attaches to your book, and it has 3 brightness settings, but no blue light whatsoever. So it won't damage my sleep in any way, which is life-changing for me because I read in bed every night. Now, this is the 3rd season Reconditioned have teamed up with Block Blue Light because we all know that healthy eating is essential and all of that great stuff, but not enough people know of how important reducing our exposure to light and EMFs is. And I really want to continue sharing this message. Sleep optimization is key to health, and these products really maximize that. So you can go ahead and use the code LV20 at checkout on blockbluelight.co.uk for 20% discount across the entire range. Thank you so much to Block Blue Light. And now an uninterrupted episode. Jo Fairley is one of the UK's leading female entrepreneurs and inspirational speakers. After becoming the UK's youngest ever magazine editor at the age of 23, she set out on her entrepreneurial journey in 1991 when she co-founded Green and Black's Chocolate, now a $100 million a year brand. She's co-founder of thebeautybible.com, which grew out of the best-selling Beauty Bible series, and the Perfume Society. She now travels the UK and Europe, motivating audiences with lessons from her business and life journey. So welcome back.
Thank you, Lauren. It's lovely to be back.
Oh, it's so lovely to have you back. So I know we did this once before. It was nearly 2 years ago now.
Oh my God.
I know. Can you believe it?
Beginning of lockdown.
It was right at the beginning of lockdown, and we were all like, we didn't know how to manage it. And we were talking a lot about how managing lockdown and all the kind of lessons we were being faced with at the time. So yeah, I can't believe nearly 2 years has gone. But yeah, it's a kind of, it is different podcast now. And I always use this term that you're one of my biggest expanders. So I wanted to get my audience now to hear all about you. So before we start, I always start by asking the same question, which is, what have you done so far today to support your wellness?
I have taken my Chinese herbs, which I get from a man called John Tyndall, who's an amazing practitioner of traditional Chinese medicine, which is my immune boosting blend that he makes up specially for me. And I am in the process of sipping my 1,000 milligrams of liposomal vitamin C while taking my box of vitamins. So I completely rattle, but I just think that supplements help keep me upright. And actually, I had to see a sports doctor recently because I woke up with a bizarre cyst on the back of my knee. And so I trotted on to see a sports doctor. And the first thing he said to me, he said, "What medications do you want?" And I said, "Well, I'm not on any medications." And he looked at my birthday, which I'm not about to share with you. And he said, "Are you not on any medications?" And I went, "No." So he said, "Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it."
What do you put that down to then?
I think I put it down to the fact that I prioritize my health. I don't think that health is something that happens to you. Absolutely. I think it's something that you are actively engaged in. And I think that mindset is not shared by everybody. I think they believe that, their health journey is literally just something that happens to them and they don't participate in it at all.
Yeah. I talk about that a lot, actually. I really feel that it's we have this this expectation or perhaps we've just bought into this narrative that your health comes from something external. Someone will give it to you.
Yes.
That the state, the government, the doctor, and that it's not something that we create for ourselves based off of the physical, but also thoughts.
Yeah.
The vibrations, the energy, every the way we live our life in every way.
Yes, exactly. So that's my philosophy, and I've been engaged with that kind of my whole adult life, I think. Taking charge of my own health and literally prioritizing it. And as a business person, with people who depend on me for their salaries and their well-being and their, day-to-day living, etc., it is my responsibility to stay well so that I can continue to do my job so that they can continue to do their job.
Love that. Yeah. And that, I feel like that's the thinking of a real leader. That's what leadership should look like. So let's go into your journey, because obviously you were the first person to you tell us about your journey with chocolate and how it all started with Green and Black.
Well, I married Craig Sams in 1991, and he's a big part of my wellness journey as well. He founded a company called Whole Earth Foods back in 1972, and before that he had the first organic bakery in the UK, and he also had the first macrobiotic restaurant in Europe, which he opened in 1967. So he has always believed that you are what you eat, basically. And we got together in the late 80s, and I would travel with him to lots of trade shows, and it was lovely people who thought that we could change the world through food, basically, and a very, very small community of brands and people. And it was because everyone felt like they were on a kind of global mission to save people's well-being through food. It was very mutually supportive. And so quite often people would come to Craig with a product idea or he would put someone in touch with someone else. It was very, very networky in a very positive way. It wasn't rivalrous at all. But we would see these same people in Denmark and Germany and America, and it was a small community pretty much at that time, and also still quite far out there. Natural foods in the early 90s had still a bit of an earth, shoes and lentils image to it. And gnarly carrots and dirt on your turnips and all of that stuff. So Green and Blacks came about because a friend of ours, it came about because Whole Earth was looking for a supply of peanuts for their world famous peanut butter.
The best peanut butter in the world, literally, hands down.
Him for, there's no question. May have been tall, dark and handsome and Nabia Silver Fox, but we know it's all about the peanut.
It's all about the peanut butter.
So as he was searching for peanuts, he found a great source in West Africa, and these particular peanuts, unfortunately, they were very high quality, but they failed a very important test, which is an aflatoxin test. And aflatoxin is something which is highly carcinogenic and it's found in peanuts. And Craig's benchmark for aflatoxin was half what the rest of the industry was observing at the time. Anyway, they failed the aflatoxin test, which was a great disappointment to him. And the guy turned around and said, well, I've also got cocoa beans. And Craig said, I can't do anything with cocoa beans. Whole Earth is founded on the principles of no added sugar, and chocolate has sugar in it. But I tell you what, can we get some samples made up with beans, and we'll see what it comes out like, and then maybe I can put you in touch with one of my colleagues in Europe or whatever. So he had this idea, in fact, that our friend Elizabeth in Denmark might launch a chocolate bar under her brand, Urtekram. So anyway, he got the samples and ate most of them. And I found 2 remaining squares on his desk and stuffed my face with it. And it's like an explosion went off in my mouth. And it was like, oh my God, what is this? This is the best chocolate I've ever eaten, because you have to remember at the time, the darkest chocolate you could buy was 49%.
Wow.
70% dark chocolate. But it was rich and just, so much flavor. And Craig said, well, it's a sample of the world's first dark chocolate, but organic chocolate, but I can't do anything with it because it's got sugar in it. And, when you can be first with anything, the first organic chocolate in the world, as a journalist, I could really see the kind of news potential of this. And also, it was such a great product. I completely believed in it. And so I kind of nagged at him, and eventually Craig turned around and said, look, if you're so interested, why don't you do it? What he really meant was that actually Whole Earth could take care of lots of the very important functions, the sales and distribution, etc. But I had to do the PR and marketing, and I had to finance it because it was the middle of a financial year, and you don't just come up with a budget for a whole new brand in the middle of the financial year. But I'd sold my flat before I moved in with him, so I had £20,034 in the bank, and 2 tons of chocolate cost me 20,000 quid, and I didn't even have enough left for a pair of shoes. So we came up with the idea one Saturday night in bed of the name, green because it was organic, and black because it was the darkest chocolate on the market at the time. Craig had some other ideas. He thought it maybe should be eco choc or bio choc, or pretty sure I wouldn't be talking to you this morning, Lauren, if that was the case.
Yeah.
So anyway, we did it, and I had no idea how much work it was going to be building a brand and everything that was entailed, and the roller coaster journey that business is, even though I'd been living with him for a while and I'd kind of, seen it. But by then his brand was quite established. So anyway, we've had this great adventure with this brand, setting out to create something that had people and planet at its heart, and kind of by the by, I guess, changing the way people thought about the food that was going into their mouths.
Why had there never been an organic chocolate before that? Because surely these places were cultivating the cocoa beans.
most cocoa production at that point was fairly industrialized. It was big plantations, and you have a problem growing cacao like that on a big plantation, because it is very susceptible to disease, and so it's hard to cultivate on a large scale organically, and so it needs, a network of small farmers, which is what we tapped into, and what we still tap into in the Dominican Republic, which is where most of the cacao comes from now. It's cooperatives and communities of small farmers.
My biggest question from everything you just said is, what gave you that assurance? And did you feel assured when you gave up your £20,000? You were left with £34 in your bank. What gave you that confidence to put it all into this thing that had never been done before?
So, okay, I'd eaten a lot of chocolate in my life. I had a lot to compare it to. I knew it was the best chocolate. And as a journalist, I had that insight into the kind of media possibility of launching something that is is the first of its kind. And I could tell that kind of on the jungle drums. It was the time when chefs were just coming out of the kitchen and starting to talk about provenance and ingredients and producers and all of that stuff. And I felt that it really kind of tapped into that mood of the moment. And sure enough, people like Delia Smith and Hugh Fernley Whittingstall, and in due course Jamie Oliver, etc., really kind of became unpaid ambassadors for the brand, basically, because it ticked all their boxes. So I knew the moment was right, and that was my journalism, basically, that told me that, and my love of chocolate.
And you've said to me once before that you do tend to make decisions on a gut feeling. Is that because I talk a lot about kind of masculine and feminine energies, and that intuition is very much the feminine energy, and that so many of us have actually lost, because in business we tend to think that we have to kind of follow where the money is and think very pragmatically. Have you always thought like that?
Yeah, I've always been incredibly instinctive, and often I can't rationalize decisions and things. I just know with every molecule of my being that something is right, and I think that that's another thing about taking care of yourself is allowing the space for that intuition to kind of flourish and grow. Because if you are running around like a headless chicken, the messages are not going to get through, and you're going to overthink. You're going to think things rather than feel them. And so, yeah, my intuition about everything that I've done has been very important.
Yeah, I feel that so much. I think that it's so overlooked, and it's really something I try to teach my clients. And it's a big part of my course that I'm teaching women to feel back into that intuition, because like you say, those decisions can't be made from the head. And that's something my spiritual teachers always told me. You can't make life-changing decisions from a thought process, because that's just coming from conditioning. It's not and so the higher self is tapped into this, what we really need, what truly we need at a core level. And it's so important and like you say, if you're running around like a headless chicken, you're not actually connected to your true self, to your intuition. How are you going to hear it? So what were the biggest kind of stumbling blocks and challenges at that time, because you were doing something so new? Was it very difficult finding the farmers, or was it, I imagine that to be able to support these farmers in that way might have been, again, like just another facet of what you were doing that was creating good.
Yes, when you're establishing what are essentially fair trade relationships with people, and we went on with the Belizean farmers who we needed a secondary supply of chocolate a few years later, because it got very volatile in West Africa and we couldn't always get the beans out when we needed them, and there were blockades on the ports and lots of other stressful things going on. So we needed a secondary supply. But the great thing about fair trade is it's a very symbiotic relationship. So we gave our farmers, we paid them a fair price dictated by the Fair Trade Foundation. And we also gave them a 5-year rolling contract, which gave them the sort of security that they'd never had before, because literally they would just sell their beans from year to year, couldn't always sell them, got ripped off by middlemen, etc. But the 5-year rolling contract also gave us security. We knew that we could access those beans for 5 years. So it enabled us both, I think, to have the confidence that we could kind of grow this business together. And it allowed those farmers and their families to plan and have a security that was literally unheard of for them, etc. So actually the biggest challenge was how successful we were, because we just grew so fast, and cash flow was always our absolute number one lie awake at 2:00 in the morning nightmare, basically. Just worrying about were we going to be able to pay our bills. And we were buying chocolate from the factory, and we were selling it to supermarkets and to high profile retailers like Conran Shop and Harrods and all that kind of thing, but they were not ever paying us as quickly as we had to pay our suppliers. You've got some supermarkets now who pay you in 180 days, which is months. So cash flow for all businesses, well, not just ours, it's the number one challenge always.
And so then eventually, obviously, you did decide to sell Green and Black. How did you get to that decision, and what made you want to do that?
Well, cash flow.
The light awake at 2 a.m.
Cash flow. I mean, the point was that we knew that we had this great brand, and we knew that because everything was tied up in stock, we didn't have the resources to grow it the way it should be grown. And by that point, we needed really high level talent as well. We needed a fantastic, I'm okay as a marketing director, but it's not my background. I'm a journalist and marketing director. And so it was very important to us that when the first batch of private equity investment came in, that it came with an injection of cash to pay for some high level talent as well. And that really powered the business to the next level. So it was quite an easy decision in some ways, because we knew we had this gem, but that it wasn't able to reach its full potential, because literally everything was in that warehouse. Every penny we had was in that warehouse. So we didn't have money to promote. We didn't have money to advertise. We didn't have money to rebrand. We didn't have, it is the biggest problem for every business I know.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess people looking at you then from the outside would have thought that you were rolling in riches because of how well it was doing.
And taking a salary. I mean, I was surviving on my journalism and having to get up, 2 or 3 hours earlier than so like 6 and be at my desk by 6 instead of 9, so that I could do some writing and then, earn some money and then get to the day job, basically.
Wow. It's just that, I don't know, it's just so lovely to kind of, to see that from someone like yourself who, people, I guess from the outside would have this image, and I suppose that's motivational for people to hear that it's not, it's not always roses from the inside when you're running a business. No,
and if you want to shut your door on what you do, don't start your own business. It's you want to go home at 6 o'clock and just, it's not going to happen. And you'll be better off working for somebody else. But on the other hand, if you do have an entrepreneurial mindset and you are prepared to kind of, ride the roller coaster and put in the long hours, it's just incredibly exciting. It's more exciting than any job you'll ever have.
Yeah, I agree. It's a juggle, but it's worth it if you love what you do. And I think that's what it comes down to, is really having a passion for it. So when did you sell?
Well, it was all sorts, lots of stages really. So we took private equity investment in 2000, which certainly helped with the sleepless nights. And we sold to Cadbury's in 2005, and then Cadbury's was bought by Kraft, which became Mondelez. So it's been quite a journey, but I'm proud to say that, you know, I'm still a chocolate ambassador for Green and Blacks. And I'm incredibly proud of what they do and the way that our values have rippled up into this huge global organization. I mean, they have a project in West Africa called Cocoa Life, which is a $400 million project. It works with farmers on the ground and 13 different charities. I think it's 13. But basically, they don't just train farmers to grow better cocoa and therefore improve their family income, but they also find out what those villages need through the network of NGOs. And so that might be water infrastructure, so kids don't have to march for 6 hours to get water for their families every day. It might be a school. And also women have to be financially empowered in the villages in order for those villages to be part of the program. So we were told by the head of craft, head of Mondelez, that, you know, this was born out of watching what we did with Green and Black. So that's my legacy, basically, is having helped to kind of influence big business to change, because a little business like ours can make a small difference, but a big business makes an absolutely massive difference.
And not just for your company, but actually what you did was totally pioneering. And now the fair trade organic chocolate is everywhere.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
If we can think about that from a non-egotistical perspective and, you know, the competition and all of that, but that's helping the planet.
Absolutely. And I really genuinely think that what has to happen now is that there has to be more collaboration. There has to be not just the spirit of competition in business, but actually of collaboration, pooling resources, pooling logistics, pooling, you know, it's going to happen. And I'm very encouraged that actually things are starting to change. Things are starting to change.
I think that's just what's needed generally on a collective basis with the planet. I'm an avid reader, follower of Charles Eisenstein. I don't know if you follow his work at all.
No, not on my radar.
He's brilliant. Doesn't like to give himself labels or titles. He's kind of a, you know, philosopher, social anthropologist, speaker, writer. I'm actually interviewing him in a few weeks. So that's a big moment. But he talks about he's got a book called The Story of the More Beautiful World We Know Exists. You'll love it, actually. I'll send it to you. And he talks about the story of separation, where we are kind of living in a society for the last kind of 100 years or so, where we all feel like we have to get on and be better than the next person, and it's competition, and it's I have to earn this sort of amount of money, and it's the story of separation. We're all separate from each other and separate from the planet. Yeah. Whereas when everyone comes together in this you know, unicity, like you've just spoken about, pooling our resources for the greater good, somehow it's almost like communism had the right idea, but just went a bit wrong, you know. And the only place that I've ever seen that actually work is in Israel, where they had the kibbutzim. And it really works. It's communal living, and everyone chips in, and you know, my family are from Israel. I've seen it firsthand, and it works really, really well. But I think in any situation where then there are kind of leaders, then it does become about the few and not the many. But just kind of following on from what you said, just based on, you know, saying everyone has to pool their resources and everything in order for this to grow. I think that's just true for life generally right now, and we're seeing that.
Absolutely. And you know, the penny really dropped, and it was, you know, quite some way into my eco journey when, you know, I was still talking about saving the planet and green living and all that kind of thing. And I was at a Soil Association event, and there's a wonderful Indian environmentalist called Vandana Shiva. And somebody asked her in the question time panel at the end, do you think it's too late to save the planet? And she just nodded very sagely and went, the planet will be fine without us. I was like, oh shit, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
It's us. Yeah. It's not the lump of rock that's just going to sprout trees and, you know, have animals running wild and be beautiful again. It's us. And I think that we kind of are in denial about that. But it was such a kind of gulp moment for me. And really, it is what it boils down to. We're creating a planet that is going to be uninhabitable by our descendants, and it will be quite happy being uninhabitable. So it's very urgent. And I think one of the things I find most frustrating about the pandemic is that there was a bit of stuff on the front page about environmentalism around COP26 in November, and then it got bumped off the front page by Omicron, and there's nothing again. And actually, it's the much bigger emergency.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, yeah, we don't need to go into the who's and whys of why that actually is. But interestingly, I'm interviewing Vandana next week.
Wonderful. Well, yeah. You can, bow down from me. She's an incredible woman.
She absolutely is. I can't wait to have this chat with her. Because again, it comes down to that. What can we all do as a collective? Because like you said, we had kind of this new age talk in the 90s and the early 2000s, save the planet and, one love. But what were we actually doing pragmatically moving forward as a collective, not just as one individual being here or there doing, and don't get me wrong, each individual being who starts on this journey is then sowing seeds to other individual beings.
Yeah.
But the initiative has to be as part of the collective. So I suppose, brands like yours really kind of were the pioneers for that starting.
Yeah. And I don't think you have to live the life of a monk. I don't think you have to stop shopping. I don't think you have to, only eat worthy food and rice and lentils for the rest of your life, etc. But I think it's about a consciousness. And I filled in, there's a new campaign actually, which I just got some info on yesterday from the wonderful Safia Minnie, who is the founder of People Tree. And basically, I'm just trying to find the name of it. It's a new campaign that is trying to get people to think about fashion in a different way. I'm just going to Google it. So I get the name. But it's about thinking before you do anything.
Right.
Basically. And so, I buy clothes, but I shop my wardrobe when I can, and I also buy secondhand and take my clothes to the local resale place, and she puts it on what we call the national debt, etc. And we buy organic, and we don't throw much food away. So it's just about thinking before you buy, shop, do anything, basically. Yeah.
This is really the conversation we all need to be having. I had this conversation with Jasmine Hemsley last week. I interviewed her and we were talking about conscious fashion, conscious living, and it's just that consciousness. We're not living like monks, like you say. I'm living in London. It's fast paced, but there are always ways to mitigate. So we can live within modern living and then find ways to mitigate harmful effects of EMFs, or we can learn how to, shop more consciously. And I think what that does, if everyone, and like you're just saying about eating organic, what I hear a lot is, but it's too expensive. I can't afford to eat organic. And I get that. And I hear that. If every single person started doing something small, every person who could afford to really make even small changes did that, it's that consumer pressure. And that's what's needed. It's the big brands who need to be changing what they're doing. I think that consumer pressure adds to that.
Yeah. So Safia's campaign is called Fashion Declares, by the way.
Okay. I will look that up and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, but with the organic thing, of course, we've heard it from the very beginning, which is, it's expensive.
Right.
And, when we launched, Green and Blacks was £1.89. But because we got economies of scale really early on, it stayed £1.89 for about 20 years.
Wow.
Incredible. And so, the more people buy, the more price comes down. And it's much too complicated to go into here. But if we get to the stage of having carbon pricing, actually non-organic food will become more expensive than organic food, because the end consumer will pay for the hidden costs in that product, which is basically the hidden cost in terms of climate change and pollution. And
right. And infertility.
And absolutely, soil loss of fertility, poisoned oceans, all of those things. It's poised to happen at some point. It's fiendishly complicated. And so I'm not going to go into details here, but basically when you buy most things in a supermarket, if they come from conventional agriculture, a lot of the price is being paid by the environment. And at some point that is going to be turned on its head.
Yeah. I've been listening a lot to Zach Bush talk about this. I find him one of the most fascinating people to listen to at the moment. I just listen to him as much as I can. And, he talks about how glyphosate from Roundup, that they're spraying on all the crops. It's not just a case of, well, I buy organic, so I don't need to worry about that. It's getting into the soil supply generally.
Really?
And so it's getting into our water. And because of how that all works, it's actually getting into our rainfall.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I live in Hastings, and they spray the weeds with glyphosate. And it rains and it runs off into the sea. And I'm swimming in that, and it's just wrong. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with them going along with a flamethrower and killing the weeds that way, if they really want to kill the weeds,
Right.
So and I think that, the danger is that people hear things like this and they freak out and they just think, I can't deal with this. It's too much to take on. And so it goes back to exactly what you were saying about baby steps, basically.
Right.
Doing one thing at a time. And reading and thinking more than we currently do. And, going right back to that early point of taking care of yourself. I think, I know that if I've been overworking and overdoing it, the first thing I want to do is treat myself to something. It's like I need a treat because I'm knackered and I've worked so hard and all that kind of thing. Well, if you're not quite so knackered, you don't kind of need to go out and buy a new handbag or this, that, and the other, because actually it's its own reward. It's its own reward. I'd rather, and now, if I need a treat, I'll have a massage. My handbag days are behind me. I own enough handbags. And actually, I haven't got a big collection of handbags, but I've certainly got enough to last me the rest of my life. And I think that most of us do.
Yeah, I had this joke with my husband last year on my birthday, because he was like, he bought me a shamanic drum, and he was like, most people of your age are asking for handbags. And I've bought you a shamanic drum. So, that's how high maintenance I am in that respect.
So I'm just going to hold up to show Lauren, but I did buy a new handbag last week on eBay.
I love it.
£15.50, and then got a strap for it. It's kind of embroidered black leather. It was on eBay. It was £14.50. I think the strap was another 15 quid or something. And the kind of the satisfaction of knowing that I've got something pre-loved. I'd much rather have that now than some kind of designer label item.
Yeah, I agree. And I love following you on Instagram, because you always post these amazing finds that you found in a secondhand shop or on eBay or something, and they're always gorgeous and beautiful. Everything's so eclectic in your house. I love
it. Very eclectic. I think I was a magpie in a previous life. But yeah, I can't. I did buy a new sofa a few years ago, but I really, if I possibly can, I just redid a kitchen, and I got it off Facebook Marketplace, and it was £945 for a solid kitchen that this person had paid £20,000 for 15 years ago. And it's so much more meaningful to me because it's already had a life.
Yeah.
I just sent him some pictures of it actually in its new setting, and it's all been painted green and it looks amazing. And he was like, wow, I can't believe it's the same kitchen. But
yeah. Well, this is the thing. Sofas is massive. We're renovating at the moment, and I had this conversation with Jasmine last week about, sofas and the foams in them and the off-gassing and new sofas. And now I'm looking for like, secondhand sofas, but a lot of them are, it's a minefield. But to come back to your point of these conversations are never to scare people or overwhelm people.
No.
It always comes down to what can you do today to take that first step towards helping the planet. If you can't afford to go out and buy everything organic, what can you do to be part of that collective that is helping to shift us into more positive behavior patterns?
And obviously, if you're only going to buy one organic thing, it should be chocolate.
Obviously. Or just, in case, you're listening to this and anyone's listening and hasn't heard about this, always look up the Clean 15 Dirty Dozen, because that's really important. It's just for anyone listening now, it's basically like fruits and vegetables with really thick skins. The pesticides are less likely to penetrate deep, whereas things with really thin skins like strawberries, berries of any kind, cucumbers,
lettuces. I would never eat a non-organic lettuce.
And broccoli. Apparently broccoli, I've seen, but they tested the DNA of a non-organic broccoli, and it was hardly a broccoli. Yeah. Kale as well.
We don't throw food away. We really, Craig is, in particular, is the leftover king,
Yeah.
Have a second life and a third life
Absolutely. Yeah. And we all need to be more like that. I think we've got so used to this, and my husband was like this, and he's really got better since he's kind of stepped into more conscious living, conscious thinking. But we live in a society of like, we just want now. We want new things. We want to experience. We want, variety. So, he'd want a different meal every day, and it needed to be exciting. And, he's really moved away from that in the last few years, because that was really difficult. So we've got leftovers, but you want to cook something new. Well, let's have the leftovers. Yeah. So just to touch on, obviously, then you sold Green and Blacks, and then you started with the Beauty Bible.
Yes. Well, actually, to be fair, Beauty Bible started in 1996 as a book, and it became a kind of I think, with the biggest selling series of beauty books ever published, because we did about 13 versions of the Beauty Bible, and now it's all online at beautybible.com. And we have our Beauty Bible Awards, which it might sound kind of contradictory on the one hand, talking about saving the planet, or saving the human race, let's get that right, and then also talking about something which is considered frivolous and frothy, but which actually you and I know is really serious stuff, because actually it's part of self-care. And that time that we spend on our beauty rituals, I've realized why it's so important to women, which is that it is probably the only time in that day that they do something that is 100% exclusively for themselves. Almost certainly. So that's why it's so important to people. But the point of the Beauty Bible is we send real products to real women to trial. We have groups of 10. They get 10 products, and they put them through their paces as a real customer would in real life, over a period of months, not just kind of rubbing it on your arm and seeing what it, does it smell?
Yeah.
And it's actually seeing what results you get. And our mission is just literally out of the hundreds of thousands of products out there, to identify products that are really good buys, and that a group of 10 women who are very representative and, have the right skin type or skin tone or problem, quote unquote, like, cellulite or whatever, can find products that actually really do work without having to embark on very expensive trial and error that leaves them with a whole load of stuff that actually they just staring guiltily at on their bathroom shelf, because they've spent money on it and they can't quite bring themselves to throw it away, but it isn't what they hoped.
Yeah, and I so agree with you about rituals. I'm such a big fan of rituals generally, and especially with self-care when it comes to women. And that is something that I wouldn't say I'm a vain person, but I take pride in how I make myself feel.
Yes.
And that's important to me.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so I totally get that. So is that still something you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, Beauty Bible's up, and it's still going. We do a feature every day. Sarah, who is a former Health Writer of the Year, really was You Magazine's health writer for 20 years. She does a weekly column. We both do features for the website, and we also every day have a Beauty Bible Loves product, which is something that we really, with all our experience, also really rate. And well, I mean, we probably could make a fortune selling advertising, but we don't, because I don't want to be in the pockets of any of the beauty brands. I want us to have this maintain this reputation that we have for being completely independent.
Yeah, I love that. That's brilliant. And so what is your focus on mainly these days? I know you do a lot of amazing talks, and you're asked to do lots of inspirational speaking.
Which is so nice to be able to do it again. Because obviously for about 18 months, there were no real life events. And I really missed them. And it's not a ego thing. It's just, I know how hard it is running a business. I know how hard it is to be on a career path, and the fact that you need constantly to have your batteries recharged and feel inspired again to kind of get back on the horse and, keep going, etc. And so if I can inspire people, which, is the word that I am delighted to say is most often used after my talks, then, I was incredibly lucky to be able to hear other people, other inspirational speakers talk. And sometimes it was enough to kind of keep me going, when things were very, very hard, and they often were very, very hard. So I think it's really important in business to step away from the firefighting and look at the bigger picture, and it will almost invariably make you feel better about things. And I think listening to somebody speak is a really good way of doing that. I mean, it's the same with podcasts, frankly. I listen to lots of podcasts, and it just it gives you a fresh perspective. And you can be, I go for a walk, I listen to a podcast, listen to your podcast, listen to Holly Tucker, and by the time I get back to my desk, my brain's in a different place.
Yeah, I agree. I've said before, I never got to go to university. I was, very disabled when I was meant to go to university, and podcasts have honestly been, I feel like I've learned more from podcasts than I would have learned from university. It's an absolute education for every aspect of my life, whatever kind of podcast I'm listening to.
Whatever you want to listen to, is there's something for you.
Yeah.
And I completely love them. I listen to cooking ones when I'm cooking. I listen to work ones during the work day, because I do feel slightly guilty if I go for a walk and I listen to a fashion podcast when I'm just walking along the seafront. So I listen to work podcasts. I do compartmentalize it a bit.
Yeah, I think you have to do that. I mean, I listen to a lot of kind of health and growth, kind of stuff, but sometimes you actually then just want something a bit more, just easy, a bit lighter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's okay as well. And you've got to listen to that instinct telling you that. So obviously last time we spoke, it was right at the beginning of lockdown. And a lot has changed, a lot hasn't. But I think I've certainly learnt a lot and have grown a lot. I'm wondering what's changed for you, or what you've learned or gained in these last 2 years.
I definitely know what I don't want to do anymore. And in fact, I sold one of my businesses at the end of lockdown because it was just not bringing me, it was not what I wanted to spend the next 5 years doing, basically. And so I reclaimed that part of my life. And I think also part of having that business was that I did keep a flat in London, which I only rented, but I had somewhere else that I had to be, and I had a lot of meetings and spent a lot of time away from home. And actually, I loved being at home absolutely consistently during lockdown, not having to go to London for 3 days a week or 2 days a week even, and I just thought, I'm not going to do that again. I'm here now. and it's wonderful. So so that's a big shift, really, is that I have one life in one place, and occasionally it's inconvenient and I have to spend a night in London and either kip with a friend or stay in a hotel or something, but in general I'm really liking just being grounded in one place. That's probably the biggest change for me.
And are you still doing the Wellington Centre?
Yes, we have our wellbeing centre, and of course we had to shut it at the beginning of lockdown, but as certain services became because this is a 9-room wellbeing centre in Hastings where I live. It's really beautiful. We have really world-class therapists, and as it became permissible to have things like acupuncture or physio or osteopathy or whatever, we kind of could partly reopen, but it wasn't until when was it? I mean, I've lost, like everybody, I've lost them.
Yeah, totally.
What happened when? We've got no sense of time.
Literally none.
Literally none. I say to people last year, and actually I think about it and I mean it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, because that was before the pandemic and after the pandemic. And if it was before, then you're thinking about, over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is mad.
But anyway, so anyway, we're back to having classes again, and it's pretty much back to normal now. But at the same time, actually, from a business perspective, we've never been busier because people need a lot of TLC now. Psychologically, we have psychotherapists and counsellors, etc. And there's a lot of mental health challenges that have been the knock-on effect of lockdown. So,
yeah, I mean, huge, to the extent that everyone I speak to mentions a challenge that they faced I hadn't thought of, someone's child. Or I always give this example of Vida, my youngest, who's 3 now. She was 1.5, not even 1.5 when we went into lockdown. And I remember taking them, the playground was cordoned off, it was all closed, but the skate park was there. And there were people who looked at you funny if you walked into the skate park, even though it was, an open space. But, my children were like screaming for something. And I remember Vida going down the slope, the concrete slope, and going, wee, and me going, oh my God, this poor child doesn't know what a slide is. She thinks this is a slide, this concrete slope. And that's not going to kill her or harm her in any way. She'll be fine. But it's just that there were instances, I hear people tell me all sorts of stories of how their children have come out of this and the anxiety levels. But there are things that have happened that we and the world leaders can't even fathom that people are managing.
Well, the children, there's a whole cohort of kids who haven't learned to share. Haven't learned to share because they haven't gone to nursery and they haven't had to kind of tussle over a toy train or sit two kids reading a book together or whatever.
And not even just sharing, but knowing how to be social.
Yes.
A lot of them are scared, and there were some parents who obviously were very scared themselves. So those children are fearing germs now or fearing getting sick, which is a real shame.
I do think that on balance, it was a reset that the world needed. I mean, I'm sorry that it had to happen like that, but I do think that it gave people a pause, and I do think that most people have emerged from it thinking more about their actions and not just being on a kind of doing things by rote and on a treadmill of consumerism, and I think that in the end it will prove to have been a positive thing if it can't.
No, I think energetically,
grannies can't really be a positive thing, but at the same time, we were never going to stop and think, and so it took that to make a lot of people stop and think about how they might want to live their lives differently, do things differently. And I love the fact that we've kind of seen the death of the office as it used to be. If people want to work from home, then a lot of people can work from home and have a better balance to their life.
Yeah. I think it was that energetic, collective rock bottom that we needed for that reset. And I do see what that's doing. And I hear a lot of people, talking about this, and this reset was needed. We can't carry on the way we were going. And you're right. People are thinking.
I'm sorry it had to happen like that, but I think that in the end, it will have been a positive thing.
Yeah. Well, before we get going, are you ready for All About You, the quick fire round?
Yes.
So the first one is always the same for every guest, and that is wellness is
taking time to focus on yourself, not just look after everybody around you.
Oh yeah, I love that. If you could raid one person's brain and retain all their information and knowledge, who would it be?
Gosh, that's really, I mean, the late Steve Jobs is one of my heroes, I think, and he was obviously a lot more mathematically and tech minded than I am. I never know, is it right brain or left brain, but whatever it is, the creative side, I'm almost exclusive.
Yeah, right brain. Yeah.
And I think that he probably had a good chunk of left brain to him.
Yeah.
While also having a fair bit of right brain, I would say. So I think the late Steve Jobs.
Great answer. I've never had that one before. The best lesson you could offer to women starting businesses?
Whatever your plans are, just bear in mind, it's going to take twice as long, cost twice as much money as you think it's going to. And that's a kind of law of the universe. So, maybe don't give up the day job, maybe partner with somebody, but, don't allow your business dreams to run into the sand just because it's taken longer than you think, because a business is like a car. It's that kind of 0 to 60 curve. And at the beginning, you've got no brand awareness. It's all going along very, very flat. And then suddenly it takes off. But that moment that it takes off is quite a long way along that curve.
Yeah. What do you know to be absolutely true that others would disagree with?
Oh my word, what do I know to be absolutely true that others would disagree with? That there is one day they will be able to measure little electrons firing between human beings that we can't see or feel, but we know how we missed them in lockdown, and we've all kind of come into a social setting after lockdown and felt the electricity and the energy that's there. And so I'm absolutely convinced that there are little somethings that fire between human beings that we can't see.
Yeah, well, I think they have started to measure it really within how they measure energy.
Right.
And Zach Bush talks about this a lot. When you hug someone, you're actually giving them your sun. So the sun that you have synthesized from the sun, you actually pass to someone else when you hug them for more than 20 seconds. I know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so last one, obviously because of the Beauty Bible, what product are you loving right now?
What product am I loving right now? I am loving so many things. I am a big fan of, I've got the Empty on my desk. It's a L'Occitane product that did incredibly well in our Beauty Bible trials, called Divine Harmony. It's their top of the range age-defying cream. And I'm still loving it, but I'm nearly run out, so I need to get another one. And it's the one that I've got one line on my forehead where my fringe misses. And if I stop using this cream, that line comes back. Huh. And I swear when I start using this cream again, and I obviously, this is just me, but that line goes away. And
wow.
So I can't stop using it.
What's the brand?
It's L'Occitane.
Right.
Divine Harmony.
Okay.
And it comes with a refill, so you don't have to buy the outer packaging every time.
Oh, I love that. Amazing. Jo, thank you so much. It's been so lovely speaking again.
Lovely.
We'll put all your details in the show notes, and let's hope we can do this again sometime.
That would be lovely. And yes, Happy freedom, everyone.
Yes, happy freedom indeed. Lots of love.
Okay, take care.
Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. And thank you also for taking responsibility for your well-being by listening to podcasts like this. It's something I really appreciate. And before you go, I just wanted to remind you to check out the Recondition Your Life Academy at laurenvakneencoaching.com. It's a 12-week course that I run 3 times a year for small tribes of like-minded women. If you love anything you're hearing here on the podcast, this course will serve you so deeply. Everything from inner child healing, divine feminine healing, and health optimization to how to find your purpose and how to find or cultivate conscious relationships, and so much more. Check out all the testimonials on the website from some very happy previous Academy members. The growth and healing available in this course really is unique. Just head over to the website and make sure to get your name on the waiting list for when we launch the next semester. Sending so much love your way.